guys, today I'm going to be doing a review of The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. This is a YA fantasy novel that's had a lot of hype. I'm part of the YA Warriors book club on Goodreads, which I will link down below, and this was the book of the month for March. This book is about a girl named Shazi who lives in this kingdom where an 18-year-old boy called Khalid is the king, and he kills off a new bride every morning. When Shazi's best friend becomes one of those brides and gets murdered, Shazi volunteers to be the next wife because she wants to kill Khalid, and then basically she ends up starting to fall for him. People tend to be in either the camp where they absolutely love it, or a lot of people seem to not really like it so much, and I am more on the side of not really liking it very much. I do want to start though with the things I did enjoy about it because there were good points. One thing that everyone's praised this book for is it being diverse. It's based on the Arabian tale of 1001 Nights, which also has Egyptian, Persian and Indian roots. And although it's set in like a fantasy kingdom, it's based on Khorasan, which is, well, it was a province in Persia, which then became Iran. So it's a Middle Eastern setting and it's described really beautifully. There's also a number of Farsi, Farsi is Persian language. There's a lot of Farsi words used throughout this book that are defined in the glossary at the back of the book, which thankfully I watched Laura, who is Bookies and Cookies, I watched her review on this book, the spoiler-free section of it, before I started reading it, and she mentioned that there's a glossary, and I wouldn't have known that because I never flick to the back of a book when I'm reading it because I'd be too scared of spoiling myself. So I had no idea there was a glossary until she mentioned that. I'll link her video down below because she really enjoyed this book, so if you want like an alternate point of view, there's that. So yeah, I loved that it had all these Farsi words throughout. I just wish that the glossary had had the origin of each word, or like the language as well as the definition, because there were some Hindi words thrown in and there were some Arabic words thrown in as well, names and words. So I can understand why everyone is so confused about where this book is set and what language is being used, because it is kind of a mishmash of a lot of different things. I understand that because Renee's obviously taken different elements and combined it into her own like fantasy world. It's understandable that it's not just based on one sole thing. I also got a kick out of the fact that there is a character in this book called Roya, which is my name. It's only a person that's mentioned very briefly, but I have never seen my name in literature before, so that was really exciting for me. That is the beauty of having a name that is Persian, because I don't speak Farsi, I'm not living in Iran, and I don't read any Iranian or Middle Eastern literature, so I never come across my name in anything, so that was pretty exciting. The last thing that I really liked about this book was one particular quote, which goes, "You cannot control the actions of others, you can only control what you do with yourself afterward." Moving on though to the things that I didn't like about this book, because there was quite a lot. The first thing, and it's kind of a major thing, I didn't like the storyline. I felt as if it had a lot of holes in it. There were some things that never got explained and some things that were introduced and then never mentioned again. There's a magic system in this book that doesn't really get explained, and none of it is done in the way that, oh, she's coming out with a sequel so it'll be fine, it'll all be explained then. I felt like I was missing something constantly throughout this book. The pacing of this book also felt really odd to me. It seemed like a really long book for the whole lot of nothing that happens until the very last few pages. And I also didn't like the alternating points of view. The way they were structured just made the story really confusing, because instead of alternating regularly between points of view from chapter to chapter, it was completely random. So sometimes it would alternate between different people like several times throughout a chapter, and then it would be one person for like 4 chapters or something. It was just too random, and it was hard to stay interested in one story over another because they all seem to be moving at different paces. I didn't like any of the characters in this book, but I'm only going to talk about Shazi for the sake of not going on all day. Everyone was constantly talking about how Shazi was really charismatic and brave and bold and amazing, but I just didn't feel like she was actually demonstrating any of those traits. No matter how much all the other characters were saying all of these things, I just didn't see it in her. Also, her thought processes about everything seemed ridiculous, and her feelings didn't make any sense at all to me. The romance between her and Khalid was the worst case of insta-love I've ever read, and it also made absolutely no sense. It wasn't plausible or convincing in my opinion, and I also hated the unnecessary love triangle that happens. So finally, for the most part, I also wasn't a fan of the writing style. I'm not really into heavy metaphors, it's all a bit too mushy for me, particularly in a novel, and particularly when I'm totally unconvinced by the feelings that the metaphors are there to try and evoke. It was just, I found it really irritating. So yeah, I won't be reading the sequel to this book. I have no desire to, but it just, I mean, it's one of those things where it depends on what you like. So if you like a lot of metaphors and like beautiful writing, you might like this. If you don't mind a bit of insta love and a bit of love triangles, you might like this. And if you can look past the holes in the storyline in that, and if you can bear to like wait until the sequel to hopefully have some things resolved, you might like it. Like I said, I really liked the fact that this was a diverse kind of story. I liked the setting, I liked the use of Farsi, and I liked that it had my name in it, and yeah. So I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. If you want to follow me on Goodreads or add me as a friend, I always have my Goodreads account linked in the information bar below. I always review books pretty much straight away after I've read them, so if you want to be like first to hear my thoughts on a book, that's where I do it. There's also Twitter and Instagram linked down there as well if you want to follow me on those things. Subscribe if you haven't already if you liked this, and I will see you guys with my next video. Bye.